welcome one and all tonight. My name is Jackie Short. I'm the Director of Sydney Centre for Creative Change, and I'm really happy to be able to host this hour and a half with you this evening to focus on the issues of holding space, what that means for us and what that means for our nearest and dearest and all the people that we have contact with in our professional lives. This is a difficult and challenging time for all of us around the world, not only with the virus going on out there, but also for what it means for us needing to work from home and needing to be home. And what I wanted to do this evening was to give us an opportunity to reflect on some of these issues, to think about the ethical, practical, and other implications about what this means for all of us. So thank you very much for being here. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm hosting this from tonight here in Sydney, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and pay our collective respects to their ancestors past, present and emerging. I'd also like to welcome each and every one of you. I'd like to say good evening, good afternoon and good morning from wherever you're logging in from. We have people from around Australia and some people in North America also. So welcome to everybody here. We're going to do a couple of different things this evening. I'm going to be giving you a short presentation, but we're also going to be doing some interactive exercises together tonight. So as I mentioned, what my vision for tonight is to give you a short presentation on some issues around holding space, to be able to give you some opportunities to interact in the chat box here and with some other exercises and activities, and also to be able to give you some prizes. And we've got some nice giveaways. Some people have generously donated things that they'd like to share with you that can help you in your practice, but also help you in holding space for yourself in the weeks to come. And we're also going to leave you with a whole lot of resources that Aidan's been very busy working on and I've contributed to, and a lot of people have got tips and practical things that we're going to share with you after this time as well. So that's our plan for this evening. Some of the things that I've been thinking about and working on over these last couple of days before I decided to put this together. So my hope for tonight is that after this welcome we've had, we really are reflecting on the new measures that we need to consider for the new times that we're in. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about and sharing and give you an opportunity to share what are the things that we can collectively do better and more of to be able to hold our own space. I genuinely believe if we can't be in a space that's as centered and grounded and supported ourselves, then we really can't do the best for those who are in the circles of care around us. So what that means in terms of holding space for others, particularly in this brave new world of working online, I want to talk through some of the practical things around that tonight. And that will be an introduction, and I'll flag some other places and resources that are out there to support you with that too. And then we'll end up thinking about quite practically, what can we do? What do we walk away with after tonight? So for those of you who don't know me, and I know many of you do, many of you have come to our training, which is wonderful, and it's lovely to see you here tonight. My name is Jackie Short. I'm a counselling psychologist and a play therapist and supervisor. And most of my work for the last 25 years has been in training. So in addition to counselling and supervision, most of what I do is with the company I set up, Sydney Centre, and it's in person. So this is really new for me, as I'm sure it is for all of us, thinking about how we are when we're not directly with others in a room. For those of you who don't know, Sydney Centre is a leading provider of creative therapy training in Australia. And we provide training in sand play, play therapy, and loads of other creative therapies, increasingly now with easy online training workshops and webinars. One of the things that's important to me, and always has been in training, is to offer skill-based and interactive learning. And I'm learning ways that I can make my training online a bit more interactive. So I'm hoping tonight I can share with you, by doing with you, some of the things that you might be able to do with your clients, your supervisees, and perhaps even with your students also. Some of the nice feedback that we got recently was from this psychologist who said this was by far the most useful workshop she'd attended, with a brilliant mix of passive and active learning with lots of interaction. So let's see how interactive we can be tonight to continue that. We know this is a threat that we're all facing. And for me, one of the things that's really important is remembering why Maslow matters at this critical time. For me, Maslow matters because it's not business as usual. We're all suffering we're all being affected by the necessary quarantining and at-home work we need to do. And for many of us, not only our clients, but our immediate circles of friends and family members, and even some of our own kind of, some of us are struggling with our physiological and safety needs. We're not necessarily sure about ongoing employment, health, property, toilet paper supplies, other sort of food resources. And given that this is a critical time, and I feel very confident that it will work out, and it will work out in the short to medium term, there's still really big risks and really big threats that we face. And I think when we're talking about counselling, whether you're counselling adults or children or groups, whatever sort of mental health professional you are, what Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that when we're counselling, we're working at the upper end of that. We're working more around love and belonging, esteem and self-actualising. But we can't do that higher order stuff until we've got the secure base. So I think part of what we need to rethink, and I've been sitting with this for the last month, I guess, is how can I continue to do this work in an ethical way, given that it's not business as usual, and I have to really respect that I'm going to be struggling at times and the people around me will. This is really a time when we need crisis intervention, I think, more than we need counselling. And it doesn't mean that we don't continue to provide, receive counselling, because that's important. But before we do that, we have to assess, is there a need for a critical intervention for ourselves and for others before we actually think about offering counselling at all? A definition that I like by Jeffrey Mitchell, and I worked in crisis intervention way back in the early years of my career. He argued that it's temporary but active and supportive entry into the life of individuals or groups during a period of extreme distress, which we are in at the moment. What this is about, this period, is, and the model of crisis intervention refers to methods used to offer short-term immediate help to individuals who've experienced an event that produces mental, physical, emotional and behavioural distress. And I think most of us can probably tick some experience of distress that we might have had in each of those categories recently. So what can we do as mental health professionals to think about short immediate help for ourselves and others, in addition to or differently from what we're currently doing? The principles of crisis intervention that Mitchell flagged for us many years ago when he developed this model was that we need to think and work simply. People don't respond to complexity in times of great distress. So if we provide messaging, and if we provide training or counselling or any other support that's too complex, it's going to be further overwhelming for people. So we want to keep our sentences short. We want to keep one message being delivered at a time. We don't want to contribute to the problem. We want to be a solution to it. We want to use pictures and emotional images over too much text or word. So some of these really simplifying strategies can really make us more effective in the work that we're doing. We also want to think about how we can intervene briefly in supporting through crisis. So we're not looking at long-term deep work right now. We're looking at maybe even just a check-in call or a check-in email for clients to see how they're doing and to see if they need any critical help or support, if they need community involvement, if they need police assistance in DV situations, if they need certain situations of support that are far more brief and far more direct than the services that we might normally provide. We also need to be innovative. We need to be able to be creative to manage the new situation that we find ourselves. And even the fact that you're here tonight online suggests that you're prepared already, and no doubt you're already being innovative in the sort of interventions and the sort of responses that you're going to be taking to all of your client groups and your colleagues and your families and yourself at this time. So we're thinking outside the box. And this, to me, is a time of incredible potential and possibility, because some of the innovations that we can sit with and develop now might well have very far-reaching and positive consequences for how we continue to practice way into the future. We also need to be pragmatic. It's all very well to have great great notions of what's going to be really helpful and what's going to be useful for people based on theory or based on what's worked before, but we need to be able to throw all that aside and sit with the immediacy of somebody's need and our own capacity and ask, will this work? Because if it doesn't, it's not going to be effective. In Australia recently, in the last couple of weeks, there's been an encouragement for teachers to go online, as universities and higher education providers have. And theoretically, I think this is great, but practically, I so feel for all the parents at home who now need to be expert in teaching as well. I think I really like this little diary entry from Ben last week. He was writing his experience of being homeschooled, and he said, "It's not going good. My mum is getting stressed out. My mum is really getting confused. We took a break so my mum could figure this stuff out, and I'm telling you, it's not going good." So poor Ben is really experiencing a lack of pragmatism when it comes to expectations of schools or organisations that think we can put all this online and the education's done. I'm certainly not suggesting every educative institution is doing that, but I think this is a good example of how making something not pragmatic or not practical doesn't help the end user, doesn't help the children, the adults, the families that we work with and we're trying to support. We have to make it practical. Ideally, we also want to make it proximal. Even though tonight we are connecting around Australia and around the world, when we talk about direct support for clients, I think the closer we are, the more useful it is. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we can't benefit from shared collaboration, communication and connection, because I genuinely believe we can. But when it comes to direct client services, if I'm offering counselling to someone in New York and that person has a critical incident, I don't know what on the ground resources there are to ring and support that person with. If they're having a crisis in Sydney, I know the number for the mental health team I could call. So when we look at giving support and services, I genuinely believe the closer we are, the more practical it is. Even if we can't reach that person in person, at least we understand the cultural frame around that person and we understand the resources and the networks that could well be drawn down on to help in critical situations should that be required. I think the other thing we need to do with critical incidents is thinking about responding as quickly as we can and stocking the shelves that are empty as a metaphor for this. So we don't want to wait. When people need our assistance, we want to be able to triage the support that we can offer and really give it as quickly as possible. We also want to manage expectations. The crisis intervener ideally works to set up a positive, realistic expectation of what can be achieved. And that might not be what you've said could be achieved a month ago. So if you have existing relationships with clients that you work with, maybe what you can deliver and what they can receive at this point is different. So I really would encourage you to think about your client load if you are taking things online and be prepared to renegotiate, recontract and manage expectations about how available you might be, how easy it is for them to access your help, and really talk through all of that before you get started, which is, I know, part of the reason why you're here tonight. So we'll look at some of those things. That's part of what we're doing. But before we look at some of the practical things that we can do for others, I think it's really important that we spend a bit of time thinking about ourselves and how we can hold space for ourselves. So could I ask you now to do another exercise? Could I get you to write in the chat box the title of a song that you think best describes how you are managing at this time? And I'd be keen to hear from you, Aidan, some of those song titles. I don't know, some of you might have prepared a little bit earlier.
I'm getting a lot of I Will Survive. I've gotten a few of those. That's a popular one. Under Pressure.
Sorry, what was the other one?
Under Pressure by Queen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Bridge Over Troubled Water. That's a good song.
Lovely, yep.
Yeah. You Raise Me Up.
Oh, beautiful. So some good descriptors, some good metaphors for how we might be feeling and what we're experiencing at the moment. Thank you for doing that, and keep those coming through if you'd like. We know that we can't pour from an empty cup. So what we need to do is take time each day, if we're not already doing it, for self-care exercises. And I know a lot of you would already be very skilled and versed in these. And we're going to share some of those ideas with each other in just a moment. In challenging times, it's important that above all, we have a balance within ourselves. So the capacity to find that balance and do physical, mental, social, spiritual, emotional things every day to get ourselves grounded, to find a sense of peace and calm within is really critical, I believe, if we're going to be able to continue offering counselling services. I think we're all wounded healers, but unless we can manage some of what we need to manage in the outside world, inside here, we can't do our job as successfully as we could, ideally. So what I'd invite you to think about and to share, again in the chat box, is up to 5 personal coping strategies, 5 personal coping strategies that are working for you now. Because some of the things that are working for you, I'm sure may be working for others, but also could be of benefit to others. So could I get you to write some of those things in the chat box? And Aidan, would you mind again reading those as they come through?
Yeah, got yoga, painting, professional development opportunities like tonight, getting things done around the house, listening to music. We've got walking outdoors and working in the garden.
Lovely. Great range of things. Excellent. I've requested that you grab a sheet of paper, or you bring one with you tonight, a couple of sheets, and some texters. What I'd like to do just for a couple of minutes now is get you to draw, of those 5 things that have been working for you, what are the 3 things that you think have helped the most? And can you represent those either figuratively, so you can do something that's a bit abstract, or can you actually draw, represent, doesn't have to be beautiful, just representative. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you into small groups and ask you to share your pictures or your words and some of your coping strategies with others. So you'll get to meet people who you might not already know. There'll be groups of 3 or 4, and you'll have an opportunity for about 5 minutes to share with others what your positive coping experiences have been. It's a good way to connect in with others here too. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that drawing. All right, let's resume and talk about holding space for others. This is confusing. Most of us don't work online, and if we do, it's only in a really small way. And most of us have been forced to, in different ways, go online in the last couple of weeks. I would imagine that most of us are at home or very close to being home at the moment. I'm 100% at home at the moment and have been since last Saturday, and most people I talk to are at least 85 to 95% home at the moment, and I would presume that's the same for most people here. What I'd like to do is think about what is, for you, some of the advantages of actually working from home. And what I'm going to do is ask you to complete a quick poll. I'm going to put up some questions, and I want you to vote which of these 4 advantages is the best advantage for you in working from home. Is it that you get to wear your slippers all day? Is it that you have no travel time? Is it that you can manage your work time in a way that you like? Or do you appreciate having no office politics, apart from some of the domestics that you have to deal with now instead? What for you is the biggest advantage? And then what would you predict would be what others would say? Tie with no travel time and can manage work as we like. So 2 of many advantages we know that working from home offers us. Clearly, there are advantages for us and for our clients in terms of accessibility. They don't need to travel either. They can wear their slippers And they can, if they have the technology and the equipment, they can access us in a way that's probably easier for some and more beneficial for some who might be housebound in different areas or in different ways, or who might find face-to-face contact a bit challenging. I know adolescents often find online therapy modes actually easier than they do coming in and sitting across from a therapist in a room, if that's the way that we're working. For some people, it can be more affordable depending on our pricing structures, and it can be more affordable for us if we don't have room rents and other overheads that we need to consider. The other advantage, and there are many, I just wanted to highlight 3 tonight, is that there is an extensive online tele community, and in the last 2 weeks, there's been a huge explosion in this space. For example, there's a Facebook site I would recommend to those of you who aren't already connected in with it, called Teleplay Therapy Resources and Support. So for those working with children, and particularly for those working in the play therapy space, there's a lot of subgroups within this Facebook group. It has a section on bibliotherapy and whole different sections on different ways of working in this sort of space. So there's some advantages. Some of the things that no doubt you're getting your head around, or you've already starting to come to grips with, is the need for a secure platform to work from. And by secure platform, I mean a platform that's encrypted. So if we use Skype, or if we use Facebook, or if we use FaceTime, or you know how old I am by looking at me, and I'm a late uptaker when it comes to technology. So I have only discovered the platform that I'm using in the last couple of years, but I find it quite reliable. I'm not going to plug it over other platforms because I know there are others around, but whatever platform you're using to do online work, please make sure it's encrypted and secure, that it can't be hacked, and that it has a secure audio and visual system as well. Obviously, very practically, we need a device at either end with internet, microphone and camera. We often also need training in online platform use. And most of the online platforms that are available have free training sessions. So I'd really recommend jumping on board with some of those and skilling up in it. Some of the things that I think we do need to think about in online therapy and telehealth is who we're working with, who our clients are. It's a question that we're always considering when we're mental health professionals, no matter where we come from or what group we work with, but particularly if we work with vulnerable clients, especially if we work with children, we know when we work with those groups, we always have more than one actual client that we're working with. So when we work with children, we have at least one, if not 2 parents that we also need to manage, and they're also part of the client network. We also have schools and other associated allied health professionals or adults who are involved in that child or other vulnerable person's life. So thinking about who we're working with and how we need to contract with and negotiate communication with becomes a little bit more complex in this sort of form. What we're actually doing, are we doing crisis intervention? Because I think we need to do that first and foremost. We need to check in, how are you? How are you traveling in light of all this, irrespective of whatever other agenda you might have already presented for or you've been referred for? Let's look at this first, and how can I best support that or get you support with that before we do anything else? When are we going to do this? Some of these needs might need to be forestalled to the future because we can't physically or practically or emotionally manage some of this stuff now. Where are we going to be working from? Very practically in the house. Where are you going to be physically located? There's some fabulous, and I'm sure if you're on social media, you've seen some of the great jokes and clips and humour that's coming around. I saw one just the other day. A poor Spanish woman was trying to do a serious webinar, and she was all dressed up, and her husband came in behind her with a cup of coffee in his underpants, and she freaked out and he freaked out, realising he was going live around the place, and crashed into a wall and then sort of ran back the other way. So there's some really great things around, and I think we do have to appreciate that not only are we struggling with space and private, confidential, quiet, uninterrupted space, but we need to negotiate that for the people that we're working with also. How we're doing this, so what sort of methods that we're going to be using, and maybe the stuff that we were doing before is not necessarily going to be so relevant to what we need to be doing moving forward, given that we're restricted with the modality we're using, but also that we're in different times. So we do need to rethink how we're working. And the big question is why? Why are we doing this? Am I just doing counselling and supervising and training work so I can pay my mortgage? Is it only about my financial security? And it never is for any of us in this profession. Otherwise, we wouldn't have taken on these jobs and the training that we're doing. So if it's not just about my own satisfaction, why am I seeking to help this person now? And can I really do it in a way that's going to be optimally meeting their needs? So just continuing this conversation about ethical and legal considerations for online therapy. This point about recontracting, I think, is really important. If you're transferring your face-to-face clients to online, we need to recontract. We need to say to them again, what is different now? And what is it that you need from me? Because I may or may not be able to provide that. So we need to be able to have those conversations. If we're working with children, we need to go back to the referrers, back to the parents, and recontract, renegotiate what exactly we are doing. We need to be aware of confidentiality in a really different way. So most of the children that we're going to be working with, we won't have the privilege necessarily of a closed door and a one-on-one space. So how are we going to negotiate that? And are we going to even continue to offer the same sort of therapeutic relationship if we can't guarantee that confidentiality? If we're not using secure platforms, we can't guarantee people's confidentiality either. We have no idea when we're doing online work like this, who's got a camera in the background and recording all of this. So we need to have really clear parameters around the work that we're doing and the relationships that we have. We want to make it safe for ourselves and for others. We don't want to continue doing the intensity of some of the work we might have been doing if we can't emotionally cope, because we need to keep ourselves first and foremost calm and centered and capable and coping. And if we can't, then we maybe need to rejig what we're doing and really put ourselves first. Just remember the flight attendants telling us to fit our own masks first. Remember your first aid training, DRABC, check for danger, and make sure you're not in danger before you check somebody else's responsiveness. So really do privilege and prioritize your own coping. I got lots of messages in the last hour from people saying they were sorry they couldn't attend tonight because they needed to look after themselves and have family time, not be online, have a spa. And I said, well done. It's really important that you do privilege yourself first. If you're working with people really remotely, you don't necessarily know what sort of safety networks they have around those people. So my preference is always to work a little bit more locally when I'm doing counselling work, particularly with intense situations. Or I've done a really good safety check and a resource and network check before I'm taking a complex case on. So I know I've got next of kin and at least 3 or 4 referrals I can make directly to support somebody who might be potentially in an unsafe situation. I think we critically need to look at our therapeutic methods at this time. My preference and the decision I've made when I work with children is not to do child-centred play therapy online, because I really believe that I need optimally to be in the room with them. I think the technology is improving, and I'm not ruling out the possibility that one day it will be more direct and more personal than it is. And I think it's great we've got the technologies that we have, but I think we've got a ways to go still. So my therapeutic methods that I am going to be using more now, I'm going to be reviewing with you in just one moment. Everyone here is a member of a professional association, and I'm sure you would have got at least 5 emails from that professional association in the last 2 weeks. Take advantage of the free online forums, seminars, information they're providing you about what you can and can't do at this time. And don't feel stretched to practice outside your scope of confidence and your scope of capacity. I know the APS is frequently posting things. I know PACFA has a free 2-hour webinar tomorrow, Saturday, 28th, for people who want to take advantage of that. The other thing to think about is insurance. Check whether your online work is covered by your insurance and what the parameters are. So the insurance company that I have, I checked it the other day, it's fine to do telehealth work that I'm doing, but I can't do it in the US or Canada because I'm not covered for it there. So just check the fine print of your insurance before you embark on this also. The counselling that I advocate and will be doing online is of a crisis nature. It's social and practical support, making sure people are okay, making sure, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they've got their basic needs of security and shelter met and food. They've got proper accommodation, and they've got their needs for love and belonging met. And it might be through regular check-ins, just 5 or 10 minutes a day, just to check in with some people who might need that a bit more than most. For ongoing, for counselling individuals and clients that I've been seeing for a period of time, I'm comfortable if they are doing this online work, and I found that's translated quite well. The child work, a little bit more challenging, not impossible, but a bit more challenging. My preference, as I've said, is to do more directive work with children and to work where I can more with parents to support and guide them. A couple of quick resources I'd like to share with you, and I know most of you working with children have got or have accessed this book, The Invisible String. It's a beautiful story about the interconnecting string that everyone who loves each other has, connecting from heart to heart, and even if we're far away and a really long way away, that string still connects us. So it's a beautiful story to read. I know there's increasingly therapists who are reading children's books to their clients, which I think is a lovely thing to do, or encouraging parents to read with children, and you be there for that as well. There are some therapists also who are reading children's books and posting them on YouTube, and there are some ethical and legal issues with that. There's a copyright issue. So we need to be, in this time of sharing and collaboration, we still need some sensitivity around ownership of things. So we do want to certainly read to your clients, but probably not put them up on YouTube where others can access them, because it's not so fair for those authors, publishers. Susan Perrow, who's here with us tonight, has written one of many beautiful little stories about survival and coping for children in difficult times, and she's written and published, and I'm going to make accessible to you, I'll give you the link to this lovely little story about the little gnome who had to stay home. And Susan, I hope you don't mind, but seeing as you are here tonight, would you like to unmute yourself and just say something briefly about that story?
Yes. Hi.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Susan.
Can I first of all quickly say that I've just today posted another story. This second story is called A Handkerchief for Little Possum, and it is to help children with all the over anxieties about germs and getting sick. The little gnome who had to stay home, it's very simply trying to give a positive help the reader, and I've got a lot of feedback. It hasn't just helped the children, it's helped the parents as well, help to feel positive that we're home. And so really that's the whole message of the story. And I've written it twice. One's in full rhyme for the very little ones, and it also ends with an openness, so there's activities. So the little gnome finds different things, you know, he can read and draw and do somersaults across the floor, and there's quite a bit of rhyme in it, and he can clean and cook and curl up with a picture book, and I can't think of much else just off the top of my head. But yeah, it's very much, he can't go to gnome school, he can't go visit his friends can't visit him, and it's in 1 week got into 19 languages around the world. It's like going viral in a positive sense. It's been amazing. There's such a need, I think, for this imaginative help. Yeah, so thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you, Susan, for your wonderful work and your wonderful storytelling workshops also that you run for us. They're always very well received. I know a few people here have attended those and loved them, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess it also really kind of highlights to me, this is a creative group of people. What energy do you have at the moment to come up with some of your own resources that you could use not only for your clients, but make available to the wider community, like Susan has so generously done? This is a perfect opportunity, and maybe not this week. This is still kind of, we're still kind of coping with it all and getting our heads around it. But you know, what a great resource we have collectively to come up with new methods, to come up with new art materials, to come up with new stories like Susan's created, to be able to help those of us who are inbound like this. I think it's one of the I guess silver linings that we can really explore and celebrate. And if you want me to give you any assistance with that or help promote any of your stuff, or I'd certainly like to continue to offer these sort of forums to those people who might find it beneficial. So again, if you feel like you could offer something to the network, an hour of your time or something you'd like to put forward, let me know, and I'm happy to kind of do that as well, because I think the more we can share and support each other, the easier it is for everybody and the better we all feel. So I think connection, collaboration and communication at this time is really, really vital. So it's lovely to see so many people nodding in response to that. So thank you. There are lots of directive play therapy resources and directive interventions that can be used for adults as well as children. And I'd like to share a few more of these with you. Innovative resources that I know many of you will know, who make the bear cards and strength cards and all the other things, have a lovely set also called Ups and Downs, which I really like. And we are in a bit of an up and down place at the moment. I don't know if you've seen these cards, but these are, there's in every single one of them, there's a little pink man and a bathtub and the ocean in different sort of formats. And these can be used, like a lot of their resources, in many different ways, directively or non-directively. And the good thing about some of the innovative resources materials is that some of them are now coming online. So you can purchase an online version and use those therapeutically as well. So I'll talk a bit more about those, and I'll demonstrate some of those in the next forum that we have, and I'll let you know when that's coming up. But I wanted to share with you these particular cards, and my little nephew was over on Saturday. That's the last little person I saw before our self-isolation, and he's 3. And I said to him, can you make any story you like out of these cards? And he set to work, and probably about 5 minutes, I had them all set up. This is my dining room table. I had them all set around the table, and he collected these and he set them out, and he told me a story in a language that wasn't quite English, but it was really important to him. And some of those pictures, as you can see, are more kind of challenging than others, but I believe that this was some of his experience at the moment. And I think when we use metaphor and when we use creativity, we give children and adults a whole range of ways of exploring and expressing and working towards resolving situations that are tough. So I just wanted to share those resources, that particular set with you. That is one of my new favourites. Just the last couple of things about work. Just, I know most of you have your cameras on. Just by show of hands, who feels at the moment comfortable and confident that they will have enough work, paid work, over the next couple of weeks / months? Put your hand up if you feel really confident that you're going to have enough paid work to survive. Okay, there's some people with hands up, some people with no hands up, some people doing this, as you can see. But I can see, like me, the vast majority of us are not necessarily confident that we're going to have paid work to see us through. So I think this is one of the uncertainties as well of the work that we do. And some people aren't working, some people I know are studying. So that throws a different set of challenges forward. We had someone in a support group we're running today who is a student, and she's working in a grocery store, so she's an essential service worker. So we could all go back and do kind of essential work if we need to, but those of us of a certain age might be a bit concerned about our health and don't necessarily want to get out there and do that work. So here's a couple of other things that I've thought about I might be able to suggest to you. When you're calm and relaxed, so definitely don't do it tonight, and maybe not even this weekend. But when you get a window of calm and half an hour of an opportunity, just brainstorm what could you be doing in addition to what you're already doing or what you're trying to translate online. How can you use the skills and talents and experience you have to one, financially stay afloat? And we know that there are government services, and thank goodness most of us here live in Australia, so we've got an amazing array of services that will help see us through. So I don't think any of us are going to go seriously under, and hopefully nobody does. And if anyone looks like they're going to, let me know, and I'll at least send you some toilet paper, if not some beans as well. Do a personal SWOT analysis. And if you haven't done one of these in a while, take some time and do it again. Just to remind you, if you're not familiar with it, it's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can just do it on a sheet of paper, divide it into 4. And the strengths and weaknesses are your personal qualities and situations. So a strength is you have a mental health degree, or you're well on your way to getting one. Strength is you have a personal support network around you. A weakness might be you can't get out of the house, or a weakness is that you're feeling tired and anxious, for example. The opportunities are the opportunities that are out there. Online work is an opportunity, and the threats are things like not being able to go outside. So the strengths and weaknesses are the personal, and the opportunities and strengths are the external. So what we want to do in a SWOT analysis, if we want to do it to think about one, personal coping better, but also professional strength building and capitalizing what we have, is what can we do to increase and broaden the strength, and what can we do to minimize the weaknesses or manage those better? What can we do to take full advantage and grow those opportunities? And what can we do to manage the threats? What do we have in our strengths and in our opportunities to manage the weaknesses and the threats? So that could well take you an hour. And if you want to do that online, I'm happy to do that as a workshop or as a webinar kind of in the future as well. I'll do another free one around that. The other thing I think it's really important to do for all of us is build our neighbourhood, community and outreach, support and connection. So you might well have some person in your street who needs you, and they might just need a phone call for 5 minutes every week, or they might need some more support. And if you can do that, then that's a great way of kind of you feeling good, but also building things around you if you have capacity for that. I think there's a lot of, and I know we have to be very careful about how much exposure we have to media, particularly social media at the moment. But I think if we can contribute in positive ways to online forums and groups, it helps us and it helps others. I think in this time where we can't entirely rely on government services to make decisions and we hope and trust that they act in our best interests, but I think we're a pretty resourced and skilled network. I think there's things we can be doing to have more positive contributions to the conversation. Something that I'm really aware of is a lacking is the positive messages from young people, 15 to 35, about why they like to stay home and their decision to do that. And I think that the health messaging is going to be coming out about that. But if you're living with any of those people, if you know any who can get online and post things about why it's so important to them, that's the group that I think are going to be hardest hit because they are generally so social to stay home. So if we can encourage those people to get out there, that's an example of how we can make positive contributions. Write, if you like writing, draw, create in ways that work for you, not only for your own mental and physical well-being, but also because there might be things that come out of that. There might be resources that you create that you can use for others and for the community that can help. And prepare for when this is over, because it will be over. So keep that light at the end of the tunnel and keep practical. So some take-home questions I'd like you to consider is, how are you? What capacity and supports do you have around you to continue to look after yourself and to do the work that you need to do in a way that's going to be sustaining? Who is or are your clients, and what are their particular needs at this time? What can you realistically offer those people from a distance? So hopefully some of that presentation tonight has been useful and contributes to answers for you around those questions. The next free webinar that I'm hosting will be at a weird time of 8 o'clock in the morning. It's not an opportune time, I think, for webinars, but the reason I've scheduled this time, and you're welcome to come to that as well if you'd like to, is that the wonderful Eliana Gill has decided to very kindly make a free guest appearance for us at that. So if you've got any specific questions, or if you know of Eliana, she's very experienced in child trauma. She's published widely in the field, made lots of videos. She's got her own training institute. And she's, like all of us, wants to offer something free to the community, and she's going to come along to that. So if you'd like to meet her in virtual person, please sign up for that one. Thank you all very much for coming along. It's been great to see all your beautiful faces and have some connection, even though we're all apart. So hopefully you're able to join us next time for the morning one. I'll be taping that as well and just putting sections online. And look forward to seeing you. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, and keep well, everybody, and look after yourselves before you look after everybody else, but also look after everybody else too. All the best now. Bye.